Hello and welcome to another episode of the BDN Content Podcast. I'm Brian Nibley. Thanks so much for joining, listening today. You know, the skiing season's over here in Salt Lake City. It's springtime, snow is melting, and a similar kind of thing has happened in the Bitcoin market. We had this correction from, 106, 108,000 down to 78,000 or so, and sentiment was at all-time lows, just as bad as the 2020 COVID crash, and everyone was freaking out, and it was ridiculous because if you rewind 1 year to March of 2024, the price in US dollars had hit 72,000, and it was epic euphoria. Lambos and yachts, we're going to the moon. It was just unbelievable sentiment at all-time highs. And just a year later, a little more than a year later, you're above that price, and sentiment is near record lows. It's crazy what a short memory span we all seem to have. It's also associated with a high time preference, meaning people often think short term rather than long term. And when you've witnessed the epic volatility of Bitcoin over time, it starts to phase you less because you know the long-term trend. I mean, all of this volatility is minuscule when you think about the fact that 10 years ago, one whole Bitcoin was worth $250 or so. April 2015, the price was between 200 and 250. So being at multiple hundreds of times of that level is not a negative thing when you zoom out a little bit. But things recovered now to, I believe, 94, 95,000. And MicroStrategy is on a tear, or Strategy it's now called. They just announced another purchase of, I don't even know how many thousands of Bitcoin, but it was over $1 billion worth. And I saw an interesting post about that. Someone put it like this. They said that Strategy and Michael Saylor, they're effectively synthetically having Bitcoin. In other words, they're buying more than half actually, of the oncoming supply every month, every quarter, because Bitcoin miners only earn, I believe it's 450 Bitcoin a day. I have to check, not 100% certain, don't quote me on that. But let's just say it's 450 new Bitcoin that are created a day. And MicroStrategy is buying an average of more than half of that. So the oncoming supply is basically being cut in half. There's that much less available for everyone else. And this is happening at the same time that nations and states are developing strategic Bitcoin reserves. They're buying shares of the ETFs. I forget which country in the Middle East recently bought like $500 million worth of the Bitcoin ETFs. BlackRock has a 5% stake in Strategy on top of their own IBIT Bitcoin ETF. And there's so many things. I mean, could go on and on. The bullish developments are really out of control. And I saw an interview with Samson Mao today, who, if you know anything about him, you know that he keeps talking about this Omega candle. Bitcoin's going to $1 million in the next year or two, and it's not going to be an incremental thing. It's like gradually, then suddenly. And what did he say? He was saying that, he brought up a good point that in 2017, Bitcoin did almost 20x. It was 1,000 in January and 19,000 in December. And nothing was happening then. That was just Bitcoin being Bitcoin. And so the idea of a 10x today, this is his thinking, and I somewhat agree with it, but not fully. So by this logic, a 10x today from 100,000 to 1 million is really not out of the question, really not that unreasonable in that context, because there's so much happening. So much more Bitcoin is being bought by big money, smart money. It's not just retail anymore. In the past, it was mostly just retail. And that brings me back to what I was talking about earlier. This recent correction was mostly driven by retail selling. And I have a short blog post on this that will be published soon. Because I was having a conversation on LinkedIn with someone who commented on a post of mine saying they don't understand who's selling. And I said that about 70% of the recent selling, this comes from on-chain data that others have cited, so I'm getting it from a third-party source, but this all makes perfect sense in the context of everything. So about 70%, let's say, of the recent selling was driven by retail, who people had bought in at 80, 90, 100,000. All of a sudden the price tanks 20-25%, and they freak out and they panic sell. And if they would have just waited a few more weeks, everything would have been fine. But I know that this happens because I've seen it before. People who are new to Bitcoin can't handle the volatility, and I was like this back in the day too. It's perfectly normal because it's not something we're hardwired to deal with. It's a very new, foreign concept and a difficult thing to handle. But people sold off a lot on exchanges, driving the price down. And there's also the factor of traders, institutional traders, hedging their bets by shorting the market at the same time that they're buying spot or going long and selling, which is the opposite. And so that has an effect. But at the same time, a lot of smart money is buying. There's actually a lot of charts I've seen circulating online showing that accumulation by whales has been at record highs for months now. So a lot of people are loading up on Bitcoin, have been for a little while now, because they know what's coming. There's really no denying that the stage is set for an epic rally. It could be unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, I was prepared for and understood what the last couple of years have brought, and I've written about this, talked about this at length. But I'm really not so sure what's coming next, because it could be more muted than everyone expects, or it could be more insane to the upside than everyone expects. I really think we're at an inflection point where the outcome is polarized. It's kind of like in poker. If someone makes a really huge bet on the river, that polarizes their range of hands. They're either bluffing, they have nothing, or they have a very strong hand and they want to get paid. So I see it kind of like that, in that it's kind of a binary outcome where things are either going to be very intense, very fast, or the market reaction is going to be much more muted than what some people are expecting. It's either Samson Mao, 1 million plus, Max Kaiser also calling for 2.2 million, or it'll just be 150,000, 180,000 cycle top. My own prediction I've stated since January 2024, when I wrote an article for BitcoinNews.com, is that 300,000 would be the top for this cycle, because if you do the math, Bitcoin has historically done about a 20x from the previous cycle low, and that's 15,000 this time around. 20 times that is 300,000. So to me, that's a reasonable expectation that the price would surge to that level really high and then fall back down to probably about to where it is right now, 90, 100,000. But there's also people like the CEO of Bitwise talking about how the 4-year cycle is broken, and because there's so much capital coming in that it's going to be completely different, and there will be no cycles anymore. The price will just go sideways or up forever now. And that does seem like a possibility as well. I'm not sure. I really think, and Samson Mao thinks that there never were cycles in the first place, that it's all just perception. But just look at the history. If you have One, data point's a question mark. Two, you can draw a line. Three, you're starting to see a pattern. And in 2013, the all-time high was in November. 4 years later, 2017, all-time high in November, December. 4 years later, 2021, all-time high in November. So, I mean, to me, that's a pretty clear pattern. It's really hard to deny that. I don't get how anyone could say that that's not a pattern. So, I would expect that to repeat this time. But I also can't deny that the cycle is probably, that pattern is likely to break given all the huge developments in the market lately. And I saw an interesting video by Matthew Cratter at Bitcoin University, the YouTube channel, talking about how he was debunking this fake chart that, it's funny, I actually saw the same post on Twitter that he showed in his video. Someone putting the M2 money supply on top of a Bitcoin chart. And this is a common thing a lot of people are talking about, where you look at the M2 money supply, which is basically how much money is being printed, and you chart that forward against Bitcoin by about 80, 90 days, and the price tends to mirror it at almost a 1-to-1 correlation. But that's a global M2, so it has to be the combined money supply of all nations in the world, or all the big nations. I actually don't know what nations in particular, but it's more or less the global money supply. And this chart showed a huge, just vertical rise in the next couple months that would, if Bitcoin mirrored it, it would be going to like 250,000 by this summer. And the comments from the original poster was, please, someone tell me this data is wrong. I don't want the price to go that high that fast. And I commented saying, yes, the data is wrong. That is not global M2. It's from one specific country. I think it's India. So this is not real. And Matthew Cratter actually confirmed that in his video. He went and showed the sources of the M2. And India has this massive rise suddenly. Most countries are like flat or slightly up, printing a little bit of money. India had this huge rise that had to be some kind of a fluke, a missed data point that'll probably be corrected at some point. But so what someone did basically was take that chart of India's money supply and make it look like it was M2 global money supply. Just slap that label on it and say, oh, look, this is what's going to happen to Bitcoin. But really, that's not true. And I like Cratter's point at the end of the video. He said, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. Just keep trying to make fiat money so that you can stack sats, buy Bitcoin, and hold for the long term. That's all that really matters. And so for me, I'm just trying to continue creating content, posting on social media regularly. I'm over 10,000 followers on LinkedIn now. Thank you very much for that. If you don't follow me there, go ahead and do that. I'm also gaining some subscribers on YouTube. I'm at 33 now, which doesn't sound like much, but I had like 7 or 8 subscribers 6 months ago, I believe. So it's nice to see some interactions there. I'm flattered by all the people who keep telling me they like my content and to keep doing it. I'm also very annoyed at the army of trolls coming after me on a more or less regular basis across multiple platforms. I made a video about that, showing some things on LinkedIn. It was a Loom video, and I showed some comments. And if you actually go to the source, try to find the profiles of these people commenting crazy, antagonizing, vitriolic stuff constantly, you can see that they're obviously not real people. Their profile picture is a picture of a hockey jersey or a cat or a dog, and then they constantly just post divisive political content or stuff like that. And if you go to their company, they have 0 or 1 employees, and then their website is obviously a fraud. So things like that. That's the dark and the negative side, but again, I appreciate the positive side. So many people interacting with my content and even telling me in LinkedIn DMs, a lot of times people say, oh, I just had to connect because I really like the things you say, like your videos, your posts, your articles. So I'm just going to keep doing that and keep writing SEO articles for a company like BitPay, who has ranked at the first page of Google for some certain search terms, like an article I wrote about Bitcoin nodes for them is now on the first page. I actually think it's the number one result if you search for Bitcoin nodes demystified. And if you search for what are Bitcoin nodes, which is obviously a much more common search term, it is still on the first page. So if you're interested in any kind of copywriting or content marketing needs, you can reach me at brian@bdncontent.com. You can visit my website, bdncontent.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The handle is @bdncontent. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/@briannibley. And again, go and find me on LinkedIn. So thanks for listening. I hope you gained some insights from this podcast. And go ahead, drop a comment, and let me know your thoughts. Thanks.